and welcome to another A Tippling Philosopher video. Today I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about Genesis in the Hebrew Bible and the creation myth of Adam and Eve. And let me remind you that it is obviously a myth, especially when you take into account the ancient Near Eastern cultural and historical milieu in which it is set. So it is drawing from previously existing stories where we have commonalities, motifs such as a tree of knowledge and sort of immortal life, if you like, talking serpents, ribs, Garden of Eden, these kinds of ideas. They aren't new to the Bible, to the Torah. So I think it is worth noting that, because obviously the story is mythological. It's a creation myth. However, if you are of the biblical literal persuasion, here's a problem that you might need to explain. And in that context, it is also worth noting that when you are presenting overtly mythological stories, when you are creating these stories, you're not particularly worried about the finer details and minutiae of the narrative, because it's just a story to deliver some kind of explanation or theology or this or that. Okay, the story isn't historically accurate or true, and so therefore the story creators, the storytellers, are not generating the story with that in mind, with some kind of narrative accuracy in mind. So problems like the one I'm going to express are whatever. That's how they should be treated, because this is a creation myth. It is not a historical account of how the world started. That's obvious to me. So here is Genesis 3, and I'm going to read it out to you. Now the serpent was more cunning than any animal of the field which the Lord God had made, and he said to the woman, "Has God really said, 'You shall not eat from any tree of the garden'?" The woman said to the serpent, "From the fruit of the trees of the garden we may eat, but from the fruit of the tree which is in the middle of the garden, God has said, 'You shall not eat from it or touch it, or you will die.' The serpent said to the woman, 'You certainly will not die, for God knows that on the day you eat from it, your eyes will be opened, and you will become like God, knowing good and evil.' When the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was desirable to make one wise, she took some of its fruit and ate, and also gave some to her husband with her, and he ate. Then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves waist coverings." So on and so forth. The idea is that this tree it's a tree of knowledge of good and evil, effectively. In eating the fruit, they become like God. So you have a divine command, which is God saying, do not eat from this tree. Do not eat the fruit from this tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Okay. So they go about their lives being happy with being naked, following God's order, God's moral command. And you could see this in terms of divine command theory, where what is good is what God commands. Yeah, this is it in its earliest form. So God has said, don't eat from this tree. And then eventually, being tempted, Eve and Adam eat from this tree. God gives a command, a moral command. Adam and Eve break the moral command. This is a fall of mankind. Adam and Eve are punished, and humanity thereafter are punished on account of the decision that Adam and Eve made. Now I'll talk about problems with that in another video. I just want to concentrate on this, and it's such an obvious problem that's so often overlooked. They are punished for making a moral decision, a morally bad decision whereby they break God's command. However, they have not yet eaten from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So when God has commanded them, do not eat from this tree, they have no knowledge of good and evil. In other words, they cannot know that eating from that tree is either good or bad. And yet God punishes them on account of them breaking his commandment. How can you punish? That's like punishing a lion for eating an antelope. Like, it has no understanding of morality in the sense that we do, where it might see that as bad. Maybe it's as a stretched analogy, but some kind of entity that has no knowledge of morality, of good and evil, being punished for doing something that is deemed by a third party as being evil, and yet those two entities, Adam and Eve, don't know good and evil. They are not actually committing moral harm in breaking God's commandment because they have no concept of moral right and moral wrong, because they haven't yet eaten from the fruit that allows them to evaluate breaking the rule in order to eat that fruit. We have a completely incoherent story in terms of moral philosophy, or in terms of how the narrative really works, the chronology of what goes on in order to unpick whether these two people know what is morally right and wrong. Of course, you don't really need that. It's just a myth. It's just a myth. It's not important. But if it's literally true, it is important, because it then becomes incoherent in an important way. Because if that represents actual reality, rather than just a story to explain how we came by rationality, how we became more godlike in our mental capacities, that's not important. If it's literal reality, oh dear. God is punishing Adam and Eve and the rest of humanity based on a complete philosophically incoherent evaluation. So there you go. Adam and Eve cannot know before eating the fruit what is right and what is wrong, and so therefore cannot be punished, or should not be punished, for eating that fruit, given that they do not know what is right or wrong. And yet God punishes them for that, and if you believe in original sin and the fall of mankind, punishes the rest of humanity. Oh dear. Methinks it doesn't make much sense. Thank you for watching the video. Please like and subscribe and share and support the channel. Thank you very much. And question everything, particularly the Bible, but definitely yourself.